and the Word became flesh. Now in John chapter 1 verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. And the word, referring in John chapter 1 verse 14, is the Greek word logos. It is a term for the person of Christ. And thus, having been assumed into the union with the Logos, it was miraculously sanctified so as to be sinless and perfect. Now, Jesus Christ was truly the Son of Mary, but at the same time, he was also the sinless Son of God. The result of the incarnation and the conception and the incarnation was that Jesus Christ was bone of her bone and flesh of her flesh, of her substance. And Mary was the mother of Jesus' human soul, as well as his human body. See, the two natures in Jesus Christ that proceeded from the time of the embryo on through into his time of his manhood. Now, and the scripture says that, and the Word became flesh. Let us look into John chapter 1 verse 1 as to getting some light from that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was and is God. It's predestined to speak to men. So divine Word had taken on human form. Therefore, in becoming flesh, the Word does not cease to be divine Word. The term flesh in he became flesh is referring to his human nature. The immutability of the Son as well as his deity are not compromised by the term, for the being of the Word does not have new existence. However, he does with the assumption of a human nature in addition to his divine nature, thus entering into a new form of existence. So in John chapter 1, the Word was, which is in juxtapose to verse 14, the Word became. In verse 1, we read that the Word was God, while in verse 14, we have the Word become flesh. Eternal being stands in contrast with the temporal becoming of God's Son, becoming man. So in verse 1, we read that the Word was with God, while in verse 14, the Word came to be with us. Now in verse 1, we have the Word was God, while in verse 14, we have the Word became flesh. Now the eternal being stands in contrast with the temporal becoming of God's Son. Thereby, then in John chapter 1 verse 14 states that the divine Son became man.